why do we have to rely on the meds when we can do it naturally? Inflammation is the number one cause. And when I talk about inflammation, it's cell inflammation. There's a study that showed that 75% of the adult population cannot process pasteurized cow dairy efficiently. We want to support the liver, and we do that with bitters. We also can't ignore the fundamentals, which is sleep and stress. You still want to break the fast with protein and fat, but it is a good idea for everybody to give themselves at least 3 hours of fasting before bed. Fasting, I believe, is nature's reset button.
Best-selling author, founder of Keto Kamp, guiding people get healthy with keto and fasting. Our guest today on the Settle or Be Better podcast is Mr. Ben Azadi, who's going to be talking to us about keto, fasting, and a lot more. So welcome, Mr. Ben, and over to you. Why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about why keto and fasting? Why is it that you're so big on these two approaches particularly?
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me. It's all about getting better. I love the name. Let's be better every day. That's the goal. And keto and fasting help you do that. When we think about keto and fasting, they've been around forever. There's nothing new about it. It's just new to some people or nuanced. But these are ancient healing strategies that all of our ancestors practiced. And when we think about what it does for the human body, there's so much research that shows what ketones, for example, do to communicate with the mitochondria and produce more energy and also increase the basal metabolic rate, lower insulin, lower inflammation. There's so many benefits to being in a state of ketosis, which is our birthright, essentially, is to burn fat. Unfortunately, most people are sugar burners. They're not burning fat. They forgot about this metabolic process called ketosis. And I believe we're in a keto deficiency. So the goal is to get people back into this metabolic state. And then fasting goes right with ketosis. Fasting does a great job with getting rid of cells that are inflamed, cells that are not working properly via autophagy and repairing those cells. And also what it does to fix the gut, help with brain fog. Fasting, I believe, is nature's reset button. So many people are eating high carbs and eating throughout the day. So they're never in ketosis. They're never taking a break. And I believe that's two of the biggest reasons why we see disease rampant with diabetes and cancer and autoimmune conditions. So ketosis and fasting plug right into that because it helps you reduce inflammation at the cell level, at the same time helps your cells produce energy, and it puts a dent in a lot of these statistics we're seeing out there with disease. So I love it. I love these two tools. I've been practicing and teaching them since 2013. And a lot of the science now has caught up where fasting and keto are super popular now. Back then, there wasn't too much about it. So it's super cool to see the science catch up with what I saw back then.
Right, that's really amazing to know, and you're doing some amazing work. I mean, I'm sure you get this a lot, but just looking at your Instagram and just looking at each reel in itself gives us so much insight with all the new research, and it gives us a much needed push also. So thank you for sharing all that information.
Thank you.
In the last decade or more, we have observed this huge wave of keto obsession, followed by so much hate for it as well, right? Like, even you'll see the same people who were like at one point obsessed with keto, and that's all they would talk about and that's all they would practice. And then, something happened, something shifted, and then they were just like sort of backlashing at it and telling people against it. What do you think have people missed out or misunderstood about keto, and what's something that they've probably done wrong over the years which has made them sort of go without it?
Yeah, it's a great question. You're right. We have seen that over the years. I think I have a different view on ketosis and how to apply it and how to use it. I like to use it as a metabolic process, as I mentioned, but as a means to achieve metabolic flexibility. Meaning, I think keto is great. I don't think we should be in long-term sustainable ketosis forever. I like going in and out, which is I call Keto Flex, which is the premise of my book. So a lot of these individuals who used to be diehard keto educators, they did too much keto. They did it too aggressively. And if you do that too aggressively, you're going to tend to see some of the results go away and actually you notice some symptoms. So they view it as, oh, keto was the problem, but it's not really keto that was the problem. They just used that tool the wrong way. So it's not like ketosis is not necessarily a diet. So saying that you shouldn't do keto or saying keto is bad for you, that's like saying a metabolic process that we're designed to utilize is bad for you. And I don't believe that. So I think that's where it lies. A lot of people just did it the wrong way. They did it too aggressively. It's too stressful in the body. But the goal is to use it and use it often to go in and out of a state of ketosis. And that's, I believe, the way we were designed to live.
Right, understood. And talking about keto and fasting in terms of some very common health issues that we unfortunately see people go through, right? Like one of it is diabetes, and the other would be thyroid issues like hormonal issues like thyroid and PCOS, PCOD, right? So in terms of diabetes, first of all, keto and fasting, how beneficial is it? And as an observation, I see a lot of diabetic patients, like even my parents, and in fact, unfortunately the doctor, the trainer advising against fasting, right? Like you are diabetic, you cannot fast, it's not the best approach for you. What is your view on it, and what does the science say today, that how beneficial is keto and fasting for diabetes particularly?
Well, the reason that doctors and dietitians tell their clients and patients not to do fasting when they're diabetic and on meds is because obviously when you fast, you lower glucose, and they're already on meds. It might lower their glucose too much into a hypoglycemic state. But here's the different, premise. Why do we have to rely on the meds when we could do it naturally? It's like they're telling you need to eat so you could use those meds, and I'm saying no, we should not eat so we don't have to use the meds or use less of the meds. So that's the miscommunication there. It's like, okay, let's let the body lower the glucose naturally. Why do we have to take a drug or insulin to do it? So they're going to tell you that fasting is dangerous because you might go hypoglycemic, and they're right if you're combining it with meds and insulin. So that's where you work with your doctor, practitioner, or find a doctor or practitioner who's understands how fasting works and keto works, and you lower the dosage of those meds gradually as your body is naturally lowering those glucose levels. But when you think about the cause of type 2 diabetes and these hormonal issues, you mentioned PCOS is a result of too much insulin, and also thyroid conditions and all these other hormonal conditions. Inflammation is the number one cause. And when I talk about inflammation, it's cell inflammation. When the cells are inflamed, the hormones cannot get in, the nutrients can't get in, the oxygen can't get in, and then symptoms manifest. Where allopathic medicine, conventional medicine gets it wrong is that they look at the symptoms and try to treat it. All right, let's put you on this medication to lower the glucose because your symptom is high glucose levels, or let's get you on insulin because you have high insulin levels. But we should ask the question, what is causing the high glucose levels? What is causing the high insulin levels? And that is a result of a few things. Primarily, though, it's a result of eating high carbohydrate diets, processed carbohydrates, processed seed oils, and eating frequently. That is adding fuel to the fire. You're eventually your body is not going to be able to adapt to the amount of glucose in the bloodstream, and insulin has to just keep pumping out huge amounts of insulin from the pancreas. And over time, it develops into type 2 diabetes, and then eventually, insulin resistance, and then type 2 diabetes. And then at that point, we don't want to get to that point, but at that point, the doctor is like, okay, we got to put you on meds. But we want to be proactive. Why do we want to ever get to that point? But if you are at that point, then you would use fasting and keto to reverse those conditions. And we've seen it all the time. I see it all the time with my academy students, and there's even studies that show keto and fasting, one of the best ways to lower inflammation, lower glucose and insulin, and allow your body to regulate these hormones, help these hormones become more sensitive. These individuals who have hormone problems like type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance and PCOS, their hormones are insensitive because their cells are inflamed. So as we do keto and fasting, now the receptor sites on those cells could hear the hormones and they become more sensitive. And that's what we want to do. Sensitive hormones is the goal.
Right. Of course, and I think that there's still a big gap that needs to bridge in terms of the way we eat currently. And when we talk about type 2 diabetes, most of the coaches or doctors would suggest you, if you are a type 2 diabetic patient, to sort of eat in the manner of 6 meals a day, eat after 2 hours of breaks, instead of anyone sort of telling you probably try fasting, give it a try, give intermittent fasting a try. And that's something that is a big gap that needs to be bridged, because I see that with my parents as well. And that's what their doctor would tell them. That's the plan that they would sort of get, that this is what you have to do. You have to eat with 6 meals a day. And that's a big thing that needs to be worked on today.
Yeah, no, just to add to that, that's exactly what they told my dad to do in the early 2010-ish. And then he ended up losing his life because of that bad advice. 2014, I lost my dad through the complications of diabetes. But they give that advice because it's just old way of thinking. It's outdated information, but they want to be able to use those meds. And here's the thing with the meds, whether somebody's taking blood sugar reducing medications and or insulin at the same time, the blood sugar levels might get better when your doctor does your, quarterly lab report or yearly lab report if you're on these meds. So they'll say, look, the meds are working, but the question is, where is the blood sugar going? It's either
Mhm.
going and being packed away in tissues and organs that we don't want it to be packed away in, or in body fat, or they're taking meds that force the kidneys to flush it out, and over time that's overwhelming the kidneys. So it's not. Meanwhile, the condition is getting worse. The diabetes is getting worse, but the blood sugar levels are getting better. So with fasting and keto and changing your actual lifestyle, the blood sugars get better, but the condition gets better too, and that is the biggest difference right there. We want both to improve.
Right. Of course, understood. And when it comes to people over 50, how safe is it and how can someone start implementing keto and fasting into the lifestyle? Someone who has probably not done anything like this for the last 50 years and, probably is not very active about taking care of their health or their lifestyle, right? And they want to make this switch. They want to start with keto and fasting. What are some things that they should keep in their mind when they are over 50?
They should probably ease into it since it's been 50 years or so of the opposite of what they're about to do. So ease into it. If you're eating 300 grams of carbs a day and you've been doing that for almost 50 years, let's gradually decrease those carbs, gradually get you into ketosis. And then once you feel good in ketosis, you're fat adapted, which should take about 7 to 21 days, depending on the person. Then you could pair it with fasting and you're going to feel really good in that fasted state because now you have ketones fueling the brain. So I would say the best thing for those individuals is to ease into it. If you just go from 300 grams of carbs per day to 20 grams of carbs the next day, you're going to feel awful. It's going to be a lot of symptoms. So I would recommend a gradual approach into ketosis. Start with ketosis and fat adaptation, and then pair that after you feel good with that. Pair that with intermittent fasting strategies.
Understood. And talking about keto, what would be some like, five, six pointers that you would want everyone to keep in mind when they are approaching it for the first time? So when we talk about eating in a way that fits into a keto diet, right? What are some things that we should keep in our mind to begin with?
Well, the main thing to understand is that not all keto friendly foods are health friendly. There are so many different ways to do keto, and we want to do it in a healthy manner. So, for example, vegetable oils, seed oils are all keto friendly, but they're arguably even more inflammatory than sugar and carbs because of how long they stay in your body. So, I would say number one, make sure you're not consuming a lot of these vegetable oils, canola, corn, cottonseed, soybean, etc. And you want to have more saturated fats and monounsaturated fats like butter, ghee, coconut oil, olive oil, beef tallow. So the quality of fats do matter. Even though all those fats I mentioned are keto friendly, they're not health friendly. So I would put that into consideration as the first point. Make sure it's high quality fats. The second one is a lot of people overdo it on dairy, pasteurized cow dairy. And there's a study that showed that 75% of the adult population cannot process pasteurized cow dairy efficiently. So I would say make that swap with goat and sheep dairy. There's going to be much better, and you could have those on keto as well. The third pointer would be to support your liver. Your liver is very important with keto and just health in general. The liver needs to help with so many different functions with detoxification, but also the liver produces bile, which is a green substance that helps to break down fat and helps your body utilize those fatty acids, which are very important. And so many people, especially those who are older and trying to make this switch, so many people have a sluggish liver and it produces this thick bile that doesn't break down the fat. And they swap their carbs with fat and protein and they don't feel good. They get loose stools, diarrhea, stomach issues. It's because of the liver. So we want to support the liver, and we do that with bitters. Bitters for the liver is what I always say. So you want to consume things like coffee, apple cider
Mm-hmm.
vinegar, arugula, dandelion greens, ginger, milk thistle, rosemary, thyme, basil. Incorporate those bitters. And some people need to go even a step farther and take some supplements that actually have like ox bile and different herbs and substances in it that help to break down the fat. That's important. And then one more thing here for those who are going to do keto, you also can't ignore the fundamentals, which is sleep and stress. Like those need to be emphasized and prioritized because you could do all the keto and fasting you want, but if you're highly stressed out and you're not getting quality sleep, you're not going to get the results you want. So quality
Right.
of fats, swapping out dairy, supporting the liver, and focusing on the fundamentals. Those are four major tips for your audience.
Amazing. These are some great insights, and I'm sure that these are really easy to apply right away, right? It's not something that we have to sort of think about doing in the long run, like much later. So thank you for these
Correct.
insights. And two things here. First thing is that how do we know that we are doing it right? How do we know that we are like approaching the keto diet the right way? And second is keto cycling is what you talked about, right? Like how do we do that? And like what are some pointers to keep in our mind when it comes to that?
I think the best thing to pay attention to would be your symptoms to see if you're doing it right or wrong. If you notice your symptoms are improving, chances are you're doing it the right way. So that's a good gauge. It's a free gauge to pay attention to. So pay attention to some of the symptoms you were experiencing before you started keto and if they're improving. For example, the most common symptoms would be brain fog, afternoon energy slump, so fatigue throughout the day, maybe some skin issues like acne or rosacea. Weight loss is one thing. I wouldn't focus too much on the weight loss because that's going to be a byproduct of you getting healthier. So I wouldn't use that as a good gauge. But how your clothes fit, maybe some measurements, those are some good metrics as well. And you could always, upgrade that and do some lab work. That's always a good way to track if you're doing it right or not. So looking at inflammatory markers like high sensitivity C-reactive protein, looking at your A1C, looking at your fasting insulin, looking at different metrics with blood work could be super good as well. And then the second question was, what was the second question?
Keto cycling.
Oh, keto cycling. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important. I call it keto flexing. It's the same principle as keto cycling. You don't do that in the beginning. You first work on your metabolism, and I would say on average 3 months, 45 days to 60 days or so, you want to be in a ketogenic state, a ketosis. You want to be in ketosis. And then at that point, if you have no more metabolic syndrome, no more type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance, then it might be a good idea to have a day or two per week where you incorporate healthy carbs. And when I say healthy carbs, I'm not talking about 300 grams of carbs per day. I'm talking about 100 to 150 grams of carbs per day, which is still low carb when you compare it to the average person, but not low enough to be in ketosis. And the value of that is tremendous. It helps make certain hormonal conversions. It reminds your body it's not starving. But let's say you did 3 months and you're still type 2 diabetic and insulin resistant, then you still stick with it for a little bit longer, and then you could incorporate some of those flex days. And the way that I teach it in my book, it's going to be different for men versus women, and then women who have a menstrual cycle versus women who are postmenopausal. So there's ways to customize it. So you want to match it to your hormones and your unique health history as well.
Right, of course. And that's a great point. We do see a lot of women fasting the same way as men
Yeah,
do. And probably, at some point they might experience a lot of fatigue, a lot of stress on their body when they've been doing it on and on for months without a break from it, right? So that's a great
right.
point. And I hope all our listeners also get your book and get more insight into that with more, like it'll be more accessible to them when they have the book. So
Thank you.
there'll be a link in the description below. They can definitely reach out and get that done. And coming to fasting, you talk about how, inflammation can be addressed very well with fasting, but how do we fast in a way to address inflammation? Like how many hours is a goal over here? And how do we sort of like break our fast if this is our goal in mind?
Yeah, I would say a good daily schedule for intermittent fasting would be an 18-6. So that would mean out of a 24-hour period, 18 hours you're in a fasted state. You're only having water, some sea salt, some coffee, some tea, nothing else, and for 18 hours. And then a 6-hour eating window. So let's say that's 12 to 6 p.m. eating window where you have 2 or 3 meals, hopefully keto-friendly meals. That's a good daily approach. Now, there's more ways that you could do it for advanced tips. Like if you really want to lower inflammation and tap into belly fat, then you could build your way up to a 24-hour fast once a week. Great for the gut, great for inflammation. And then eventually build your way up to maybe a 36-hour fast as well, which is also one of the best ways to tap into visceral fat, belly fat, lower inflammation. Because when you're in a fasted state, it's one of the best ways to harness the innate intelligence, the inner physician within your body. And there's no chiropractor, no doctor, no dietitian that has the power of the innate intelligence, the inner physician that we have within the body. Fasting harnesses that inner physician. In the body, the innate intelligence goes and it looks for cells that are not functioning well, and it starts to fix them and clean them up. And if it's determined a cell is a senescent cell that's not functioning well, it gets rid of that cell and creates a stem cell. And all this happens during a fast. So 18-6, good daily schedule to practice for inflammation and gut health and all that, and then throw in a 24-hour fast once in a while, 36-hour fast, and you're really going to ramp things up with your results.
Understood. And when it comes to sleep and fasting, a lot of people have this complaint that I can't fall asleep on an empty stomach. I can't, get a good amount of sleep if I have not eaten, because probably it's something that they've done for a long period of time, and making the switch is difficult. How can we sort of ease into this? And is it something? Is it a wrong symptom? Like, is this an indication that we are not doing it the right way?
I think part of it is a mental thing. It's like you said, like habitual. They're so used to eating close to bed and going to bed. So now it's like, okay, I didn't eat anything. I feel like I'm not going to be able to sleep. But that's not usually the case. If you've done it the right way, if you've done keto first and you're fat adapted, and then you pair that with fasting and you're not eating before bed, which is a good idea, then you have ketones floating around in your bloodstream and going into your brain, and you should be able to fall asleep efficiently. You really should. Now, that's different than somebody doing a longer fast, like 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. I have seen sleep issues become a challenge then, but that's because your body thinks you're going through a famine and it's actually giving you energy to go out there and hunt and kill. So that could be a problem, but that's just a short-term problem. But in general, I haven't seen it be an issue. I think once you become fat adapted and then work your way into building up a fasting schedule, shouldn't be problematic. It's more of a mental thing, but it is a good idea for everybody to give themselves at least 3 hours of fasting before bed, even better 5 hours or more. You're going to notice better sleep. You're going to wake up in the morning more refreshed, and you're just going to get better results doing that.
Lovely. Understood. And when it comes to autophagy, if we can shed some light on that, first of all, just in very easy terms, what is it? How can we understand what is autophagy and why should that be our goal? And how can we approach it?
There are many ways to achieve autophagy. Autophagy is great. The Greek definition of autophagy means eat thyself, which sounds weird, but that's your body getting rid of bad cells, as I mentioned earlier. So there's different ways to achieve autophagy. My favorite way is to do it with fasting. You could also do it with exercise, strength training. You could do it with they're called senolytics, certain supplements. But with fasting, it's a guess to when autophagy starts. There's not really an accurate measurement that we can do at home for that. I like to look at glucose and ketones. It's a good measurement to see if we're getting autophagy or not, meaning during a fast, we test blood glucose, blood ketones, and if we see glucose dropping gradually and ketones rising gradually, that is a good gauge to me that you're achieving autophagy. And why do we want to achieve autophagy? So I want to break it down with an analogy so it's easy for your audience to understand how this process works. Imagine we open up a refrigerator and we look at all these groceries inside the refrigerator. Every grocery has an expiration date. But instead of using the groceries, we end up leaving them in the fridge for a long period of time, letting them expire, and we don't throw away the expired junk. We just kind of push it towards the back of the fridge. We go to the supermarket, buy fresh groceries, put those fresh groceries in front of the old groceries and close the door and leave it there. It's going to be nasty. It's going to be a disgusting environment. Bacteria, mold, nasty things are going to manifest. Well, the human body is similar to this refrigerator. We have cells and proteins and mitochondria that have expiration dates on them. Autophagy is the process of throwing out those expired groceries and putting fresh groceries so we don't have to deal with symptoms and disease in the future. That's why a gentleman named Dr. Thomas Seyfried, who's a cancer researcher from Boston College, he said a 7-day water fast once a year reduces risk of cancer by about 95% with other lifestyle interventions like keto, et cetera. So that is the power of autophagy. It's incredible. And so I would say around the 16-hour mark of a fast is when most people start to turn on this autophagy process. So obviously, the longer you go, the more autophagy you'll get.
Amazing, understood. And when it comes to breaking a fast, what is the right way to do it? Should it be protein first? Should it be fat first? What is a good meal to break a fast with? And also, should it be something liquid that we have first after a long fast, or can we really break it with some solid food?
Oh, the second question was with the long fast, what?
Like if we are doing a longer fast, say of 24 hours, 36 hours, like you mentioned, is it good to sort of break it with some sort
Ah,
of a liquid, like, bone broth or something else, or can we go for solids immediately?
yeah, good question. So the longer the fast, the more strategic you want to be with breaking it. So let's say it is 36 hours or longer. It would be best to do something like bone broth and go low and slow versus like a full meal, especially if you're doing more of a 5-day, 7-day fast. I have on my YouTube channel, my Keto Kamp YouTube channel, I have a video on how to break a fast like that. It's a 2-day structure. So for sure, you want to go low and slow and be really strategic. Now, if it's a shorter fast, you still want to break the fast with protein and fat, not with carbohydrates, because if you break a fast with carbohydrates, you're going to be very carbohydrate sensitive. Meaning, if you are 24 hours into a fast and you're like, okay, I'm going to have a whole bunch of white rice, or I'm going to have a donut, or I'm going to have something with a whole bunch of carbohydrates, you're going to experience a big glucose spike. And then your pancreas is going to have to shuttle out even more insulin, and then a sharp decline in your glucose levels, which is going to result in fatigue, and also it's going to wear out your pancreas as well. So protein and fat is great because you don't have that issue. So that would be protein shake, steak and eggs. It would be avocado and bacon. I mean, whatever you eat, protein and fat is the best way to break a shorter fast.
Understood. Amazing. And we did discuss about how beneficial it can be for type 2 diabetes patients or people with hormonal issues like thyroid or PCOD, right? But what are some other health conditions that people might be facing today that would benefit big time if they make this switch and try for some time going into ketosis and fasting? What would be some people like with what particular health issues apart from this that would really benefit from this approach?
Well, brain fog is very common, and keto and fasting work really well for brain fog because it helps you create more energy, especially energy in the brain. So if we're dealing with brain fog, once you enter ketosis and get fat adapted and then eventually keto adapted, you're going to notice a big breakthrough with the brain fog. You're going to have more mental clarity, energy in general too. You're going to have more energy. So that's also something it'll help with. High blood pressure is another issue a lot of people face, and that's also an issue with high insulin levels. So you'll notice regulated blood pressure levels. You're going to notice fat loss as a side effect as your body lowers inflammation. So fat loss, weight loss, etc. So a lot of people who think they go on Dr. Google, I call, and they look for how to lose weight. And it's the wrong question to ask. They should look for ways to lower insulin. And keto and fasting are ways to lower insulin. As you do that, the weight comes off as a side effect. So that's going to be important. And then also autoimmune conditions, it could be improved as well with keto and fasting because it's a gut issue. Autoimmune conditions are usually a gut issue. And with fasting in particular, great way to reset the gut. When you're eating frequently and eating a whole bunch of food all the time, it wrecks the gut, ages you faster, doesn't allow your gut to recover, overwhelms it, triggers leaky gut, triggers autoimmune disease eventually. So with fasting, you give it a break. It has all this time to just relax. I equate it to somebody who works a corporate job, a 9-to-5 job, and they work all year, and then they finally get 2 weeks vacation. And in their house, they have a garage that has filled up with a whole bunch of junk over the years because they never had enough time to clean it out. But now they have 2 weeks off. So they're going to go into the garage and start cleaning things up and organizing things. This is kind of what's happening when we fast. When we're not fasting, you have all this, the garage, your gut being not filtered, but being introduced to all this junk. No time to clean it out. But with fasting, you have all this time to clean it out. Now your innate intelligence goes and cleans out the junk. So helps so many conditions because the name of the game is inflammation, cellular inflammation. And that's linked to pretty much every disease, every symptom out there. So if you could lower cellular inflammation, you could reduce these symptoms and overcome a lot of them as well.
Absolutely. And I feel like fasting is one of the cheapest, easiest tool available to us today that, if we know how to do it the right way, it's the best thing available to us right now. So I hope that our listeners are encouraged and that they also go ahead, do their own research, reach out to you, your page, your book, and learn a lot more about this, right? And my last question is about supplements. What would you say are some supplements that would really help us ease into keto and fasting? And is there something that we should sort of have in our daily routine?
Yeah, and you're right about fasting. It's free. You save money. You can't put it into a pill. That's why companies, big pharma does not like it. And it's absolutely free. You save money, which is super cool. With supplements, the key supplements are going to be electrolytes and minerals with keto and fasting because you're going to lose some of that as you lower insulin. So electrolytes and minerals, magnesium as well, something that's a staple to take. And then we could go down a whole rabbit hole of so many different supplements out there that are, beneficial. I don't think we need to be on supplements all the time, meaning I think we should rotate different supplements. So magnesium is a staple that I take all the time, and so are electrolytes and minerals. Well, outside of that, kind of depends on what you're looking for. For example, if you have trouble breaking down fat, you might want to take a supplement with ox bile. If you have trouble breaking down protein, you might want to take a supplement that has HCl, hydrochloric acid. If you have issues with sleep, you might want to take something like melatonin or even more magnesium at night. So it depends on what you're seeking, but the staples would be minerals, electrolytes, and keep those up because you're going to deplete some of that as you make that transition.
And are we like breaking our fast if we are having these supplements in a fasted state? That is one of the big things, right? Like, I mean, there are so many supplements that want us to be like, we need to consume them on an empty stomach. And if we are in our fasted state, are we breaking our fast with these supplements?
The ones I mentioned, no. There are some supplements that you do want to take with the meal. So supplements that are fat soluble, any supplements that have vitamin A, D, E, and K, I wouldn't say it breaks a fast. It doesn't, but you won't get the absorption that you're looking for if you have it on an empty stomach. You might even get nauseous. So those need to be taken with a meal with fat. Outside of that, any supplements that have protein and carbohydrates will break a fast, but that's not common. Some do have that, but the ones I mentioned don't. So they're all safe for a fast. As a matter of fact, I would recommend them, the electrolytes and minerals during a fast. That's super important.
Amazing. Understood. And that brings us to the end of this episode today. As we conclude, do you have any last messages or thoughts for our audience to leave us with?
Yeah, your podcast title, Settle or Be Better, is really it's a choice that we get to make. So be better. And the goal is just, you're not competing against anybody else. You're not competing against me. I'm not competing against you. You're only competing against what you did yesterday. So you just want to be better, 1% better each day. Over time, you just want to beat yesterday and keep beating yesterday. So don't compare yourself to other people. Just compare yourself to the actions you took yesterday, the thoughts that you thought yesterday, and get some momentum. That's the name of the game. Make a couple of tweaks. I always say small tweaks lead to giant peaks. And over time, you'll get all this momentum and all this traction, and then you're going to really accelerate and get the results you're seeking for. So just get better each day. Be better each day. That is the goal. And you could do this. These tools are available to you. These conversations that we're having like today are available. Just apply the information and you're going to be able to put your body in that healing state.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for that message. And thank you so much once again for being here on our podcast today. A link to your book and also to your socials will be there in the description below. I hope that people do reach out and just like learn so much more from your website, from your book and everything that you share on a daily basis. It's really amazing to know and stay updated with all the new information and research that you keep talking about. So thank you so much once again for that.
Thank you, Sakshi. I appreciate you.
That's all for today's episode. I am Sakshi Pawar and I'll be your host for the Settle or Be Better podcast. Stay tuned while we bring more inspiring stories your way. You know the drill. Subscribe to the Settle or Be Better podcast. Like, share, and comment on our videos. And hit the bell icon because you don't want to miss the mind-boggling health discussions we're about to bring for you. Why settle when you can be better?